Heyo everybody, Zion over here from Nintendo Life, and the day has finally come where we can share with you our full, massive review of Triangle Strategy on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this review was originally written by the spectacular PJ O'Reilly for NintendoLife.com, but was reworked into this video by me. When we previewed Triangle Strategy's opening hours just a few weeks ago, we walked away subtly impressed by its slick mix of choice-driven narrative, detailed world-building, and satisfyingly strategic combat action. It's a setup that immediately engaged us, introducing a strong cast of characters, embroiling us in some fascinating Game of Thrones-esque fantasy politics, and setting the stage for what we dearly hoped would be a grand tale full of drama, epic battles, and tough decisions to come. Thankfully, now that we've spent some 50 or so hours with the finished product, we can report that Square Enix has fully delivered on the promise of its prologue demo. Triangle Strategy is a fantastic tactical RPG that serves up an engrossing tale, top-notch battles, multiple routes through its excellent campaign, and several widely different endings that you'll absolutely want to dive back into the game in order to experience. For a game with a name as basic as Triangle Strategy, it really does so much right. Assuming the role of Serenoa Wolfort, players are thrust into the political landscape of Norzelia, where three kingdoms, Glenbrook, Hyzant, and Esfrost, are just about holding together an uneasy alliance that was formed in the aftermath of the Great Saltirian Wars. Of course, by the time the prologue is done, that alliance has been all but shattered, and what follows is a twisting, turning delight of a campaign that somehow never loses its momentum, slowly building to a fantastic finale that sees you get to choose exactly how you wish to see your true vision of Serenoa's story end. Now, it may take its sweet old time at points in the way of dialogue, but the payoff is so worth it. This is a game that sinks its hooks into you, introduces a fantastic cast of characters that you'll truly grow to care about, thrusts you into impossible situations, and affords you the opportunity to make genuinely meaningful choices that affect who lives or dies, and who and what will be destroyed as you make the sacrifices necessary in order to prevail. It's an impressively mature and complex campaign in many ways too, one that manages to successfully mix its political and more fantastical elements, injecting plenty of real-world issues regarding religious manipulation of the masses, fabricated fear as a means of control, and touches on slavery and racism in its tale. Honestly, we're not going to detail a single moment of the story here, as any spoilers would entirely ruin the impact of it all, but just know that Triangle Strategy absolutely delivers on the narrative front. The producer of the game, Tomoya Asano, has also worked on Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, and spoke in the past about how he wanted to take this game in a slightly different direction, away from some of the more traditional aspects of JRPGs, and it's a decision that's worked wonders on how the action in Triangle Strategy actually flows. The narrative structure here is tight, and there's no unnecessary dilution of the core crisis by shifting the player's focus onto the shoes of multiple protagonists. You're pretty much locked into the story from Serenoa's point of view, and it makes proceedings all the more intense and memorable as a result. You'll be given ample opportunity to hop around the world map between battles and watch how events are unfolding in other regions and with other factions through short cutscenes, but the main thrust is always kept on House Wolfort and the escalating dangers that you and your allies face as the story progresses. The core gameplay loop here consists of lengthy narrative elements, big beefy battles, and short periods of exploration that allow you to wander around the game's beautiful little dioramas. And it's a loop that works so well in keeping the player invested at all times in what's going on across a lengthy campaign. Much has been made of the scales of conviction, choice-driven aspects of Triangle Strategy in the build-up to release, and to this end, the game also manages to fully deliver on its promise. In these instances, you'll be given 2 or 3 different resolutions to a major plot point. The situation is carefully explained in detail, characters in your party voice their opinions, and then you'll have the opportunity to attempt to convince any who are wavering to stand with you before everyone casts their vote and a decision is made that branches the narrative out in a different direction, as neatly illustrated by a timeline map showing you how you've diverged from the main path. It's incredible stuff that both directly affects the story and works to give you enough agency that you're kept completely involved in what's going on, to the point we found it hard to put the game down, playing just one more hour here and there to see how the next big dramatic point would actually play out. So in terms of the story, beyond some hilariously over-the-top dialogue in places and a few rough edges to the English voice acting, all is truly well and good. But what about the combat? One of the biggest elements of the game. Well, Triangle Strategy serves up a feast in this respect too, with some excellent set-piece battles that introduce lots of well-designed systems that are underpinned by genuine tension thanks to the game's consistently excellent world building. You aren't just fighting alongside a bunch of random NPCs here. You're going up against it with your dearest friends and comrades, characters that you actually care about. And thank goodness there's no permadeath either, or we may not have been able to take it at this point. The tactical RPG elements here play out in a fashion that Final Fantasy Tactics and Advance Wars fans will recognize immediately, with the game's turn-based battles taking place on a grid system that highlights where your currently selected party member can and can't move during a turn. Strategic layers are then piled on, with each member of your sizable entourage wielding a suite of upgradable powers and abilities that you'll need to make full use of in order to come out on top of encounters. You'll want to plan in advance to make use of the game's clever follow-up attack system, whereby putting one unit on each side of a foe instigates a double assault, a move that's invaluable in taking troublesome enemy battle mages and healers down quickly, as well as taking advantage of high ground whenever possible, as attacks from higher up deal extra damage. You also need to consider employing various well-timed elemental combos of magic to soften up packs of enemies. Use a mage's powers to soak an area with water or melt an icy patch into a puddle, for example, then zap the place with electricity and frazzle a bunch of foes at once. There's opportunities aplenty here for the strategically minded, and always another way to approach a problem when you take the time to really sit back and consider all of your options. Triangle Strategy also does a wonderful job of feeding you lots of useful information in a user-friendly fashion, showing you which enemies can assault you from any given spot when you hover over a position, giving you a preview of the damage you'll dish out with any of your attacks, and allowing you to simulate entire moves before committing to them fully, minimizing your chances of making horrendous errors of judgment during battle. However, we still want to point out that we made plenty of fatal flaws during our time with the game, so don't feel bad if you still do as well. You'll be given the opportunity to sort your troops pre-fight, mulling over your options, and choosing which combatants from your constantly evolving roster you wish to take into action. The game continues to help out as much as it can here, even flagging up recommended party members and giving you ready access to your encampment area in order to buy supplies, rank up individual units, level up weapons, and so on, all before you progress to the battle screen proper. Here you can position characters where you want them before surveying an overview of the battlefield, checking your specific objectives, and then diving in. We played on normal difficulty, which allowed the few opening hours to provide a good tutorial for the meatier fights that lie ahead, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to get used to moving your party around and to get a feel for each character's strengths and weaknesses. We quickly developed go-to units and rarely went into battle without the likes of Anna, the backstabbing assassin who can hide in the shadows, Roland and his deadly lance attacks, and both Benedict and Gila providing constant healing and combat buffs from the rear of the pack. As you progress through the campaign, and depending on the choices you make, you'll fill out your roster with a whole bunch of brilliant characters. We ended the game with 18 or so in our ranks, and each of whom provides you with unique and useful tactical options. Heck, you can even flirt with enemy soldiers in order to distract them should you choose to roll with the exotic dancer Mila in your crew, or simply confuse the life out of foes with the wordsmith Lionel. There's a good amount of variety introduced to the game's combat through stage-specific gimmicks too, with some fights taking place on small platforms that can be pushed and bashed into spikes, an encounter that sees you given the ability to set fire to massive plots of the battlefield, burning your enemies in large numbers as they approach, and confrontations that see you surrounded on all sides, charged with the task of fighting your way uphill in order to engage foes who have a huge tactical advantage. Without these flourishes, the combat would still be top-notch stuff, but the variety that's added as a result just elevates the whole thing that little bit more, making for prolonged engagements that we never minded having to replay when we failed, which is something we honestly can't say often about games in this particular genre. In terms of difficulty options, things do get fairly tough in the second half of the game, with a pretty constant onslaught of fights to batter your way through, and we even dropped down from normal to easy mode on more than one occasion in order to make progress, which is something we highly recommend you do if you're frustrated, as it takes nothing away from the thrill of battle. You'll still need to think several moves ahead, there's still a challenge to be had, but you'll be less likely to spend multiple hours banging your head against a brick wall. Easy mode is well implemented and gets a big thumbs up from us. Once you've seen the credits of the campaign for the first time, you'll also gain access to a New Game Plus mode, so don't feel as though dropping to easy the first time out will see you missing anything. There's plenty of extra time to play through with New Game Plus, and the repeat visits in order to see all the game's endings give you plenty of time to improve and then crank that difficulty dial up. Now, in regards to performance, this really is a beautiful game with a sumptuous orchestral soundtrack to match that shares the same trademark HD 2D art style as Octopath Traveler, and we didn't encounter a single frame rate stutter, glitch, or bug in our entire extended time spent playing. Loading times are unobtrusive, conversation text is perfectly readable in handheld, and busy battles are easy to parse even on the Switch's portable screen. Square Enix has, in short, done a wonderful job on the technical side of things here. So overall, Triangle Strategy is a complete delight. This is a top-notch tactical RPG with slick and strategic combat, a brilliant story full of big choices to be made, and a wonderful cast of characters to get to know as you fight for the future of Norzelia. It's the kind of special game that makes a proper impact, leaving you with lasting memories of people and places, great big battles, and tiny victories snatched from the jaws of what seemed like certain defeat. Some folk may find the pace a little on the slow side at times, and as we've already mentioned, there's some seriously over-the-top dialogue and rough acting here and there, but these are minute issues in the face of everything the game gets right. With multiple paths to take through its massive main campaign, and several explosive finales to make return trips for, this is one great big adventure that we highly recommend you sink your teeth into. Triangle Strategy is an absolute triumph for Art Dink and Square Enix. A fantastic mix of satisfyingly strategic battles, an excellent choice-driven campaign narrative, and top-notch world building, all of which come together to form one of the finest tactical RPGs we've played in an incredibly long time. There's an absolute ton of content here, with a huge story featuring multiple paths to take depending on the choices you make, and several properly impactful endings to enjoy on return visits. Sarah Noah Wolfort's epic journey is a joy from start to finish, a grand and ambitious adventure that stands proud as one of the finest examples of its genre on Switch. We here at Nintendo Life give Triangle Strategy on the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you'd like to reference our full written review, you can find that along with more news and information on Triangle Strategy over at nintendolife.com. Be sure to let us know in the comments down below if you've given the demo a shot yourself or if you're planning on picking up this game as well. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, then why don't you go ahead and command your mouse cursor to click that subscribe button, because it's the right move to make. And then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we release a new video. Thank you all so much for watching, and a big thank you to PJ for putting in the 50 hours it took to play Triangle Strategy. I'm Xian from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.